Good afternoon. Hello. Can you hear me or no? Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to be getting started in a few minutes. We're just waiting for a few. There's a couple of people who are just running a tiny bit late, so I appreciate everybody making their way out on this lovely day. I'm Elijah. I'm Harold's grandson, so I'll be, I guess, emceeing this afternoon, or at least the part where you're here. You guys can do it yourself when you get home. So we'll just get started in a few minutes, and then we're going to have a couple people, family speaking. We've got a couple of friends who also want to speak, and then we'll open it up. So if anybody else would like to speak, by all means, we can get you up here and share some stories or anecdotes or whatever you'd like to say. All right, so we'll see you guys in a few minutes. Okay. Good afternoon again, everybody. We'll get the event on its way. Again, thanks for coming out on this nice day. We're going to have a couple people speak about, I guess, Harold and what a great. I guess everybody would agree he was a really great, remarkable person. I was lucky to have him as a grandfather. He sort of really helped shape me to the person I am today. through playing games or activities or just trying to be more like him. So it's kind of, and even going forward, like decisions I make have a lot to do with what would Harold do or what would my parents do, etc. So it sort of helped get me to where I am today. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple people come up, and then we'll open it up. We're going to start with Madeline, and then what we'll do is as the people come up, they can just identify how they know or how they're related to Harold, and then from there I'll just be off to the side, and then we'll go from there. So this is Madeline.
And I'll identify myself as Joyce's daughter and Harold's stepdaughter, and I was very proud of Harold. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and celebrating Harold's life. Harold is a giant of a man, a loving husband, loving father and stepfather, loving grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-great-grandfather, a mentor, a student, a philosopher, a wonderful conversationalist, and a poet, a real mensch. I first met Harold when he was dating our mom in the 1970s. In typical possessive fashion, my brother and I weren't too sure about Harold, but we quickly learned that he made our mom very happy, and she in turn made Harold very happy and became the apple of his eye. I've spent many hours over the decades with Harold. His most valuable asset was his ability to make everyone he came into contact with feel very special. He truly cared about everyone he met, from the young children he read to in the schools in Collingwood, the people in his exercise classes at the Y, the people he read to and assisted in the dialysis unit at the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, the people he read to and spoke with generally at the hospital, and the many people he assisted at Bay Haven. At every opportunity, he would do special and thoughtful things for the people he came in contact with. He was especially fond of the young children he read to and would bring back maps, brochures, souvenirs, and other objects from his world travels, which he would share with the young children to whom he was reading. He especially loved the inquisitive minds of the young. Recently, I arrived for a visit, and very quickly, I became aware that there was a triple-header CFL football on that afternoon. I asked which teams were playing, and he brought me up to date, including that he was presently watching the Winnipeg Blue Bombers game. I sat down to watch the game with Harold, as we were both ardent fans of the Blue Bombers, but for different reasons. He, because he was born and raised in Winnipeg, and me, because I'm a fan of Zach Collaros, the quarterback. Instead of watching the game, he quickly turned off the television and said, "Let's talk." I said I would be happy to watch the game with him, but no, we were going to talk. He quietly told me in a conspiratorial manner that when there was a CFL game on, he didn't answer the telephone. Harold and I never ran out of things to talk about, from politics, religion, philosophy, sports, books, theater, and any other topic that arose. No topic was off limits. We didn't always agree, but we always had engaging, honest, and lively conversations. I will miss this most about Harold. Mom and Harold are together once again, two angels in the sky, watching over all the family with love in their hearts. Harold, you will always be in my heart. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. And now Nora's going to speak.
Hello, I'm Nora McCaffrey, Harold's daughter-in-law. When I look around the room, I see so much love and admiration for the man whose life we are celebrating today. Some of us know Harold. Some of us know Harold as the kind neighbor who always had a smile on his face as he greeted you the way he greeted the day. Some of us know Harold as the proud member of the family, eager to know what everybody is up to and amazed how they managed to do it. He was always ready with words of comfort and encouragement in times of need, and ready to raise the glass in times of joy. And of course, Harold was always ready with words of advice, anytime. Some of us know Harold as the devoted volunteer who gave so much to the community through his work promoting youth literacy and as an advocate and model for lifelong fitness through his classes at the Y and at Raglan Village. Most notably, he will be fondly remembered for his volunteering at the hospital and at Bay Haven Retirement Community, where he was adored by staff and residents alike. Harold was a man of modest physical stature, but was a giant in his contributions to the lives of those around him. He truly lived by his belief that his life was a loan from God, and that by helping others, he was repaying that loan with a wee bit of interest. I'm grateful that he was officially recognized for these efforts when the town presented him with the Order of Collingwood a few years ago. But I am particularly grateful for the expressions of condolence and the sharing of heartfelt memories from people whose lives he has touched over the years. Today, I want to share with you some of my memories of Harold, his joie de vivre, his kindness, his generosity, his compassion, as these characteristics shone through in other aspects of his life. At the risk of sounding like an origin story, Harold was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, home of his beloved Blue Bombers. In his early years, he and his family lived on a farm, a simple and meager life where they raised dairy cattle and chickens. Little Harold Zuckerman would ride to school each day on his pony. I'm just going to pause right there to give you a moment to process that image in your head. When he got a little older, he would find himself a job selling newspapers. And the money he earned there, he would get into the movies, and this was a memory he would savor for the rest of his life. I think it was there that Harold honed his appreciation for drama. In fact, over the years, Harold found himself in a number of theatrical productions. Harold on stage cast in The Parson's Predicament as, appropriately, Mr. Bumble. Harold, in his friend Harold MacDonald's documentary, The Queen's Bush, cast as the captain of a ship bringing settlers from England to Canada. Harold as a vampire at Halloween with the worst teeth ever. As a new teacher in Flesherton, one of my students challenged me one day on how much I actually knew about this area as a Toronto transplant. Rob Roy came up, and I said, not only did I know where Rob Roy is, I actually know people who live there. Oh yeah? Who? When I told young Dave Christie, Joyce and Harold Zuckerman, oh, the reaction. They're the best. Every Halloween, Harold would put on his crazy teeth, get up on the roof, and put scary sounds up on the stereo system. Oh, they're the best. Then there was the time Harold was almost cast in a movie, or so he was told. He and Joyce were in Indonesia, and Harold went out one day on his own and was stopped by some men who asked if he wanted to be in a movie. They were looking for someone just like him. Well, of course. Before you know it, these strangers whisked him away in a van. Harold had no idea who they were, where they were going, and when he was going to be back. Of course, neither did Joyce. He was gone for hours and hours, and to this day, we're not exactly sure what happened. In the end, I guess the audition didn't go so well, and he was brought back to his much relieved wife. As we all listen to this story, shaking our heads in disbelief, for him, with enough faith, everything works out in the end. This was a great example of a carefree, almost reckless aspect of Harold. Nevertheless, you and I know that he could also be most meticulous, a stickler for detail. Some call it stubborn. Carefree Harold, his signature Dali-esque gingerbread man. Meticulous Harold, don't forget the raisins. Carefree Harold, sure, I'd love a hot dog. Meticulous Harold, oh, no ketchup, there's salt in ketchup. Carefree Harold, no clue where he and Joyce would be staying at the beginning of a 3-month trip. Meticulous Harold, in the spirit of cost efficiency, building that root ball of connecting flights to get there. But when those flights were set up, together with Joyce, they would wander the world, each with a backpack, like a couple of teenagers. They would come to make so many new friends on these adventures, some of whom they kept in touch with over the years. A lot of these people happened to be staying at the same place during these extended trips. One time, Harold met someone in Mexico one languid afternoon when he would play and play and play his harmonica on the veranda. Another new friend, but not before the guy came over and, following some typical pleasantries, asked Harold if he would please stop playing. Turns out they had been listening to him for hours, and it was time to stop. Please, stop. I will always remember Harold for his sense of humor, some of it self-deprecating, like that harmonica story. Laughter was something he held in high regard, not only for its emotional value, cheering people up, but also for its physiological value, exercising the diaphragm. For those reasons, he was always quick to share a good joke. Comes to mind that he once actually ran a class called Laughing Yoga. The name speaks for itself. But it went beyond the yoga classes. Those of you from the Y will remember how Harold would tell one of his jokes at the end of each exercise class. Yeah. Though he kept those jokes rolling, don't be fooled. Harold's material was carefully curated since he didn't want to offend and he didn't want to be too risque. For example, there was the one about Sarah and Saul. Do you know this one? Well, we're not at the Y, so here goes. Sarah and Saul had been married for a number of years, but have yet to be blessed with children. This was a matter of great concern. Finally, Sarah went to see her doctor to find out why they were unable to conceive. Her doctor informs her, "Sarah, I am so sorry to have to tell you this, but you have insufficient passage. And if you were to have a baby, it would be a miracle." Distraught with this news, Sarah rushes home, throws herself into Saul's arms, sobbing inconsolably. Quite beside himself, Saul asks her, Sarah, what could possibly be the matter? It can't be that bad." "Oy veyes mir, Saul, you won't believe this. It is worse than we could possibly have imagined. The doctor tells me I have a fish in my passage. And if I have a baby, it will be a mackerel." I will miss Harold for the way he told that joke. and I will miss how he couldn't get through it without cracking up. I will miss Harold's sense of wonderment and optimism. I will miss how his eyes would light up when we brought him pancakes and sausages for breakfast and matzo ball soup for lunch, not to mention gefilte fish. I will miss how Harold always had plans. Just recently, he shared with me a playlist of songs that we could practice together, him on one of his harmonicas and me on my cello. On the list, You Are My Sunshine. Somewhere at Bayhaven, someone will remember that song and they will remember Harold. Somewhere, there is a stuffed bunny named Harold that he had given to a young lady to lift her spirits. Somewhere, a child's love of reading has been kindled because Harold chose to give out picture books instead of candies at Halloween. Our lives have been enriched by Harold. He has brought us kindness, generosity, and compassion. We are fortunate to have loved Harold and in turn to have been loved by him. Zichronos livacha. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. And now for Jane.
It needs to be high because I'm tall. Okay, up. Hello, I'm Jane, Harold's daughter, and this is Jacqueline, his granddaughter. Okay. What a joy we are here to celebrate Harold Zuckerman, the man I am so proud to call my dad. Dad would be thrilled that you're all here, but also humbled by all the attention focused on him. My dad was intellectually curious and knowledgeable man. When he saw you, he couldn't wait to share something you had learned. But he also asked your opinion on what you thought of the subject. Okay, Dad had strong beliefs. He liked to share, but he also gave you the opportunity to share yours without judgment. Okay, given all of the extreme views in the news in the past decade, the one thing Dad and I did agree on was the way the country should be run here in Canada and the USA. Thank goodness. I could not wait to see him to discuss what was going on in the world. Sorry about that. However, I had to make sure I had done all my homework in preparation for these discussions. As Dad, as you well know, was well read and eagerly kept up on the news of the world. But probably Dad's joy for life is what he will most be remembered for. His smile lit up the room. His love of people and life was infectious. Somehow, he was always able to see the best in people and every situation. He never left the house, to meet someone without wearing a newly pressed shirt and freshly brushed teeth. He believed you showed respect for yourself and the people you were meeting in this way. His sense of order was also the way he showed respect for himself and his home. Dad even ironed his perma-pressed sheets. And his incredibly neat and his unique way of folding them was something I could never master. While Dad had low times in life, he moved from the low times to the highs with smile and integrity. In the last few months of his life, he was grateful for all the love and care from the health care workers, and most of all, his family. But at the same time, he was concerned that we are giving up too much of our own time for him. That was Dad. Even when he was weaker, even when he himself was becoming physically weaker. Early in life, my dad met my mom, Norma, and the best result of that union was, of course, me. Okay. Naturally, my brother Robert might think otherwise. Okay. After their marriage dissolved, Dad moved to Israel. However, not afraid of hard work, he lived and worked on a kibbutz. However, when he was offered Israeli citizenship, he declined. He did not want to desert his children. He moved back to Canada, and he always lived close to us. What a blessing he is. In later years, Dad was lucky enough to meet my stepmom, Joyce. Joyce, along with her family, brought new love and adventure into his life. Together, Joyce and Dad entertained, painted, and traveled the world. Throughout their house was a storybook of their travels. Recently, the appraiser came to the house to assess its value. I thought how these walls have many memories of joy, of passion, and yes, in the last few months, of pain. But I thought, how do you put a value on all the love this home holds? You cannot put a value on these assets. They were the instruments Dad and Joyce played in the wonderful life they created together. Dad was proud of me, and he always encouraged me to be proud of myself. When COVID hit, Dad was forced to give up his volunteering for some time. And I took that opportunity to spend more time with him. I frequently set myself up in the spare room, and his kitchen became mine. Dad was always grateful for what I cooked for him, even if it was spaghetti 3 nights in a row. He never let on that cooking was not one of my stronger skill sets, as many of you know. Dad was committed to supporting me in my goals, rowing almost always topping the list. One of my strongest memories is the day of the rowing regatta at Henley, the amateur race of the year, when unexpectedly, Dad and Joyce's car was out of commission. Well, that did not stop them from coming to see my race. Somehow, they convinced my brother Robert, who was not a big fan of rowing, to drive them to St. Catharines. We won in the last 15 seconds of the race. I now believe in karma. The greatest gift I ever gave Dad was Jacqueline. After Jeff and I told him we were pregnant, every day he would call us with some new piece of advice and thank us for getting pregnant. I'm not sure he would have been that supportive had that conversation taken place 20 years prior. Okay. Once Jacqueline arrived, Dad was so proud of her and was until the day he died. Okay, once again, thank you so much for joining this as we remember my hero, my dad, Harold Zuckerman. Yay.
Thank you, Jane. And now for Luke.
Hi. Thank you for everybody coming. I'm Luke McCaffrey. I'm Harold's grandson, one of his grandsons. He had many of us. I just want to share a couple of my thoughts and my memories about my grandfather and how I'm going to remember him. So one thing about my grandfather was that he was competitive. He had a competitive streak in him. So we would watch football, the Blue Bombers, and he'd be there kind of yelling at the TV, a missed call, there's pass interference, complaining about the play. So he really, had this passion about him in this football, and I would sit there and we would talk about things beyond football, but I really remember sitting there and that sort of urgency of the game that he was interested in. I also remember he was teaching me chess. So this was something that I think he taught many of his grandchildren. And we played chess, and he'd get this twinkle in his eye, and I knew I was about to lose. He never let me win. He would always get this twinkle in his eye. He'd pat me on the cheek or the shoulder, and then he would come back and he'd teach me the move that he used to beat me. But I don't think he ever taught me everything that he knew, because he wouldn't give it up that I could actually beat him. So this is something that I really remember. One of my most vivid memories of Grandpa was going to Rob Roy. I don't know how old I was. I was fairly young, and I was going to Rob Roy in the summer. And for those of you that have been there, walking up the driveway from the car into the backyard, and you turn the corner, and there's the rose garden there. And there he was, working on the roses, dirty, doing pruning. And as soon as he saw me, he kind of puts down the shears, and he just comes to you with open arms, a hand towards you, and this great big smile, so happy to see. Brings me in, hugs, brings me into the house, says, "Joyce, look who's here." Of course, then Grandma gives hugs, and it's this warm, welcoming situation. Of course, they ask if you want drinks and food. And of course, it doesn't matter what you say, that's going to come. Lemonade, and it wasn't just pouring lemonade. Grandpa would go, he would get the lemons, and he would make a fresh glass of lemonade for you. I just remember, that feeling that, the whole focus when you went to visit was really just on you. You really felt loved, really felt that, the pride that both of them had, and I think all of the grandchildren, you really felt that as his grandchildren. You really knew that how they felt. I went recently to visit Grandpa just a month or two ago. I think it had been quite a long time since I've actually been to visit him. But I had that exact same feeling as I did earlier. He was frail, he had his walker, but as soon as I came into the room, Nora said, "Harold, there's someone here to see you." He was across the room, and that exact same thing. He just put down what he was doing. He said, "Luke," and he made his way over to me, arms open, and that's how I remember him. And I've been to many of the dinner parties that he had, and I know many of you, this is how he greeted you as well. You would come to Rob Roy, you would come to wherever, and he would greet you with those open arms, the big smile, and he just made, I think, everybody feel like you were kind of the center of the world. He was so happy to have you there, and that everybody was loved. I know I felt that way. and that's how I'm really going to remember him, this kind of joyous love that he always exuberated whenever I saw him.
Thank you, Luke. And now what we're going to do is Jane is going to read something from one of the people, Kim from Bayhaven, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it today. So she has sent something to Jane, and then that will be followed up by Linda.
Okay. It is with a heavy heart that I'm unable to be with you all to celebrate the wonderful life of Harold Zuckerman. Unfortunately, Bayhaven is in a COVID outbreak, pardon me, and that would be irresponsible of me to attend, as I am a high-risk contact of COVID-positive residents. Harold gracefully came into my life a couple of years ago. When the pandemic hit, Harold was volunteering at the Collingwood General Marine Hospital. Because all the volunteer activities were canceled, the volunteer coordinator, Sadie Nixon, suggested that Harold come to volunteer at Bayhaven, a long-term care facility. You can only imagine my surprise to meet a new volunteer, a 95-year-old gentleman, older than most of my residents. We became family and friends. Harold volunteered at least 3 times a week for 4 to 5 hours each visit since the fall of 2020. Beside the extraordinary amount of time he was dedicated to our residents, the quality of his visits was exceptional. Harold took the time to get to know each resident in an authentic and personal level, and then sourced out the items that might be of interest and brought them in with him on his next visit. He went to the local library to find specific books and brought in many items from his personal collections, from a classical, Italian, and Latin America music, CDs to his Rodgers and Hammerstein DVD movie collection, classic car photos, European travel books, and so much more. Harold used all these items to build a connection and relationship with our residents. He would try anything to open up a dialogue to get to know the residents individually. As well, his ability to speak multiple languages helped staff with understanding the need of several residents. Another resident named him Sunshine. Every time they greeted each other, the result would be a lively rendition of "You Are My Sunshine," sang loudly and slightly off-key. There were only a few more and many, many more examples of Harold's vast impact on the residents. Because of Harold's vast knowledge and experiences in many areas, he created several weekly programs, including chair yoga and musical activities. He used his 40 years of volunteer experience from the YMCA as a fitness instructor to teach chair yoga to our residents. With his charm and humor, he made exercise fun. And our residents responded very well to his teaching style and techniques. The music program involved the use of a variety of instruments, which resulted in dancing and lots of laughter. On one occasion, he brought in some special bells as part of the music program, to which I politely asked him not to bring again, because it was driving the staff crazy. He laughed and laughed as he thought this was just hilarious. On another occasion, he learned that one of the residents was a lighthouse keeper, so he brought in books and posters about lighthouses and in the area and created a program with lots of discussion about lighthouses, and all to build a connection with the resident. While the residents are the focus at Bay Haven, Harold also took a keen interest in the staff. He always checked to see how we were doing and cared genuinely about each of us personally. He baked for us, he brought us little treats. He liked gift bags at Easter. His last visit to the hospital, he brought everyone roses. He brought everyone, his kindness and generosity was endless. I know that he came into my life for a reason, as a reminder that giving to others is what life is all about. Words do not adequately express my love for Harold. I live life with very few regrets, but I must admit that one of my regrets is not making more time to visit him before he left us. Again, another life lesson from Harold. Always make time for the people, for the ones you love and care for. Myself, along with Sadie Nixon from Collingwood General Mean Hospital, Nalusha is the general manager at the YMCA, nominated Harold for the Ontario Senior Achievement Award a few months ago. Unfortunately, we haven't heard the result of the nomination, but I can tell you there are very few people who are deserving as Harold for this award. His philanthropical spirit and generosity will live in our hearts forever. Rest in peace, my sweet friend, Kim. Okay.
Thank you, Jane. And now for Linda.
What a privilege to be here to celebrate my wonderful friend, our wonderful friend Harold, and to see so many people that he was also close to. My heart is full. My name is Linda Markowski. I met Harold 10 years ago. I actually met him at a family dinner that John and Nora hosted. And what a gift that was. You know, I met Harold and Joyce at that dinner and remained friends with both of them until Joyce's death and then Harold's after. And even though I no longer live in Collingwood, I live in Toronto, our friendship only grew over the years that I was in Toronto. So I'll try to give you a feeling of some of that through my words. I used to say to Harold that he was my perfect man, and I really believed that. And here are some of the reasons that I loved him. His energy. How many 92-year-olds can pedal for hours in a fundraising stationary bike spinning marathon for the Y? How many people in their 70s and even 80s could backpack across Indonesia, I think also India, and maybe some other places? And Joyce, that was also an amazing thing that Joyce did as well. His compassion. You've heard a lot about that, so I was going to tell you some stories about that, but some of them have already been mentioned. He was always looking for a way to be connecting with anybody. Always, what is special in their life that I could bring to them? His humility. He was truly amazed and humbled to receive the Order of Collingwood and then the Companion of the Order of Collingwood, whatever it's called. He was always feeling that somebody else was more deserving than him. His wisdom. Even in stressful times, he would sit back and he would think before acting. His compassion for others, his patience, and his wisdom helped him find an approach to life's challenges that was always respectful to others, measured and positive. He would often say he was a peacemaker, not a fighter, despite his competitive instincts. You're right. His positive choices, he just was so amazing. I remember even very close to his death, I was visiting him for a few days, and a PSW was with him. And the PSW was obviously feeling stressed and just needing to get out of there really quickly. And I could hear him talking to the PSW from the washroom. I was in the living room. And he was saying, my 96-year-old body can't move that fast. And he said, please just slow down a bit. I know that you're stressed, and I'm going to help you, get out of here as soon as possible, but I need you to just slow down a little bit. And, the PSW heard that, was, maybe was stressed, could have been angry, but Harold had a way of talking to people that kept that from happening. His generosity. Above all, his generosity was with his time and his ideas. But also, I'm sure there's many of you who have had the experience that I've had many times of coming home while I was still living in Collingwood and finding in front of my door some soup he'd made, some muffins, or maybe he'd been to No Frills or somewhere and he had picked up some chocolate almonds and, just decided to gift them. He was just, he would just always help in whatever way he could. When I was moving out of Collingwood, I had hundreds and hundreds of books that I just couldn't move to Toronto, and he loves books, as you know. So he made it his mission to take boxes of books over days and days to the secondhand stores, to the library, to people he knew, to the hospitals, and he got rid of almost all those books. He found them homes, and it was just amazing. His boundless curiosity. This is one of the things that I think tied us together the most. While history was a major love for him, Harold was interested in just about everything. The strength of our friendship was built on our shared enthusiasm for learning from one another. If I read something that interested me or saw something on TV, or if he did the same, we'd instantly be on the phone. Oh my gosh, listen to this. Isn't this amazing? He was always sending me books in the mail with his little annotated ideas. He was just a boundless source of interest and curiosity. And even during COVID, for about a year and a half, I lived with my daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter, and I was homeschooling her. So during that period, a lot of what I was reading was about how to teach little kids, right? Well, you'd think he wouldn't care all that much, but are you kidding? That was the center of his life. His creativity and his joy of life. Other people have mentioned this, so I'm not going to go on about that. But I have a picture of flowers painted by Harold in my bedroom. It's not a very good picture artistically, but it is so Harold. It is a sunshine picture. I wake up every day looking at this beautiful sunny picture, and I just think it just captures Harold's desire to express himself and his very sunny approach to life. Now, I want to tell you a story that is unique to me and Harold's relationship in my life, but I think it's such a good story because it will show you all those characteristics that made him the perfect man for me, just wrapped up into this story. Okay, just before COVID, my granddaughter was not even 4 yet. He was visiting Toronto. I think Jane dropped him off. And I was babysitting that particular day, so I was at my daughter and son-in-law's house. And Chloe was, my granddaughter, had never met Harold. She had heard about him many times, and he had sent her things at Christmas and et cetera, so she knew about him, but she'd never met him. And I had gone inside to get some drinks. We were out on the deck. And Chloe was kind of feeling a bit weird being out there with Harold, so she was ready to come in the house. And Harold's way of capturing her attention is he said, Chloe, I'd like you to meet the friend that I brought with me. And Chloe's looking all over the place, and she can't see any friend. And Harold says, it's a very small friend, almost an invisible friend. And that made her really intrigued. Chloe is a very imaginative child. And he said, as a matter of fact, my friend is right here. And he had a jacket on. And he kind of lifted up his arm. He said, my friend lives in my armpit. Well, that intrigued her. She was just fascinated by that. And he said, my friend is a circus flea called Mabel. And, you know, there was probably a big part of Chloe that knew that this was maybe imaginary, but she didn't care. She thought it was fabulous. So they talked on. The rest of the visit was mainly about Mabel, the circus flea, and this went on and on and on. And then Harold went home. At Christmas, Mabel and Harold sent a Christmas card to my granddaughter. And then that, you know, and from time to time, you know, Mabel would call at Valentine's Day, etc. But when COVID lockdown happened and I moved in with them and he found out that she wasn't going to see any little children for who knows how long, Harold took it upon himself to phone her actually and said that Mabel would like to be her pen pal. Would she be willing to have a pen pal? And Chloe said, well, because she still wasn't even 4, well, I don't know how to read. And he said, and I don't know how to print. And he said, well, that's okay. You can get your, I'm called Mucka, your Mucka to read it to you, and you can just send back a picture. So she thought that was just dandy. And every week for a year and a half, Harold wrote at least a 2-page, wrote and drew pictures, poem story on behalf of Mabel and sent it to Chloe. Sometimes those poem stories were 4 full, single-spaced, full-scat pages. And it was just amazing. And I've put all his letters and drawings together in a little book called Mabel's Adventures that I've made some copies for family and friends. So I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. But, you know, for Chloe, that was the highlight of her life. When you know a letter would come from Mabel in the mailbox, she would just dance for joy like it was Christmas, and it didn't go away after 3 weeks. It kept on. And during COVID, while I was living there, her most exciting thing to do was to write her own Mabel stories and letters back to Mabel. It was just absolutely amazing. And I think she learned to read almost 2 weeks after she turned 4. I'm sure that that's a lot of the reason that happened. It was just amazing. So, you know, how can we not think that Harold is just an extraordinary person to have done something that monumental in the life of a 4-year-old and then a 5-year-old. I mean, that is going to stay with her entire life. So I want to end by letting Harold have the last word. Harold has written poems that a number of us have received, and that is a gift in itself. And I was going to read more of this poem, but I feel like I'm taking too much time. But in this poem, he's basically saying that we have control over our own lives. And so the very last stanza of this poem says, we create the world as we choose. We are given numerous options. With some we gain, with some we lose. Let us beware of our selections. We are all blessed to have known Harold. Thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you, Linda. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Just give me a second. I think everybody's got one of these. I just want to make note that the poem on the back of this is one of Harold's poems. And at this point, we are going to have, or very shortly, Refreshments will be served. I think there's some food and drink to be had, and then we can just sort of mingle and go from there. Okay. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this. Yep. Sorry, I forgot. For the all the centerpieces on the tables, those are for you or for somebody on your table to take home. If there's more than one person who wants one, you can maybe steal one from another table. But those are the centerpieces are for yours to take home. And thanks everybody for coming.